Welcome to P&E. We have I would say not light docket, but if we respond accordingly, we shouldn't be here that long. Please open the roll.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. First, before we get to you, Senator Pavola, we have SJ 82 is basically confirming the governor's appointment, and let's do that first. Is there a motion?
Second.
Please open the vote.
I'm a little concerned about line 66 and 67.
Ayes 12, no 0.
All right. Next, Senator Pavola.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members. I ask you to draw your attention to Senate Bill 78, and there is a amendment in the nature of a substitute, which I would like you to adopt before I start discussing that.
All in favor? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The substitute is moved. Is it online?
Okay. What this bill addresses third-party electioneering. So by third party, this would be an individual, an organization that does not coordinate at all with the candidate. My substitute removes the referendum issue. So now the bill just talks about third-party electioneering with result to a candidate. And election communications or electioneering would mean any message appearing in print media or on television or radio or online platforms within 30 days of a primary or 60 days of a general election with the intent of influencing the outcome. And then what this bill says is if you're an individual and you're contributing $1,000 or more, or you're an organization contributing $5,000 or more in 1 year or $20,000 in an election cycle, that organization would have to identify its top donor on the ad. And if they didn't have a top donor, if they had 3 donors that gave the same amount, those 3 donors would have to be identified in the electioneering communication. And then the report would have to be filed electronically with the Board of Elections that would identify donors that contributed at that, $1,000 or $5,000 above, $1,000 individually or $5,000 for organizations. So that's the bill. Virginia is ranked near the bottom, 49th out of 50 by groups that look at states and their transparency laws. So they're laws that are intended to show voters who's attempting to influence elections. And that's really what this is about. There's not a burden on individual candidates. This burden is all on third-party organizations. And it's merely an effort to tell voters who's behind the ad, who's behind the communication, what organization really is trying to influence the outcome of the election. It's helpful to everybody, to voters, to candidates, to everybody. So I hope it's the will of the committee to pass the bill.
Thank you, Senator. Do you have anyone here to speak in support?
I do have folks, not many, but they came from Arlington, and I think they probably want to say a few words.
Okay, can you line up so you all stand up so I send me in support? Okay, you have approximately 3 minutes total for the whole group. So if one person uses all your time, then that's all your time. So you have approximately 3 minutes total. Please put that on the clock. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and senators of the committee. I'm Mary Crutchfield with the League of Women Voters of Virginia. We support SB 78. Virginia currently has some of the loosest campaign finance laws in the country, and the bill advances twin campaign finance reforms that would increase transparency and reduce donors' temptation to buy votes with generous funding. Broadening the scope of disclaimer requirements by requiring disclosure of the sponsor's largest contributors not only increases transparency to the electorate, which already favors restricting large donations from corporations, but it also further discourages the likelihood that a candidate becomes beholden to deep-pocketed special interests. Virginia voters are bombarded with ads during electoral campaigns, and they deserve to know who is paying for them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Nancy Morgan from Big Money Out. We support this bill, the objective of which is to protect legislators and candidates from obscure attack ads, which have proliferated since Citizens United. And many of the people in this General Assembly have been attacked, especially during primaries. Just to give you an example of what this does, is I don't like Barbara Favola. So before the election, I'm going to set up a 501c3 and LLC, and I'm going to start it's called Virginia Grandmothers Who Love Rainbows and Puppies. And I'm going to start collecting money, and I'm going to issue attack ads that say Barbara Favola kicks puppies. So what we believe is that we believe that this bill just simply forces me, if I spend more than $5,000, to put my name on the ad. People will say that it chills speech. No, I just have to make a decision on how I use my speech, and all of us do this every single day. Nor does it compel my speech, because if I give Barbara Favola's opponent $5,000, I have to disclose this. So just to remind you, Citizens United, after Citizens United, the Supreme Court had a ruling 8-1, totally supporting disclosure, and I'd just like to quote Justice Scalia, requiring people to stand up in public for their public ad fosters civic courage without which democracy is doomed. So the question for this committee is, do you agree that wealthy special interests and corporations have the right to speak but don't have the obligation to own or be responsible to that speech? Or do you support Virginia voters who should have the right to know who is trying to influence our election? Thanks so much.
Mr. Chairman, before the young lady goes anywhere.
Hold on, Senator DeSteph, one moment.
Mr. Chairman, the
Senator
last speaker, if we
DeSteph,
can get him back.
hold on one moment, please. Before we take comment from members of the committee, I want to hear from the rest of the speakers. So you'll have an opportunity to address the young lady.
Mr. Chairman, parliamentary inquiry.
Ms.
When somebody mentions, in even an example like this, when they mention another senator's name, and just as an example, saying that they kick puppies or something like that,
Right.
I just want to state for the record that Barbara doesn't kick puppies, and we love Barbara Favola, and I know she didn't mean it in that way, but when things are recorded like this, they can get taken out of context, and I certainly would not want that to be taken out of context on somebody like Barbara Favola who loves puppies.
Thank you, Senator DeSteph. I was going to clear that up as well and make that a note. For the record, Senator Favola does love puppies. Thank you. I was going to address that at the appropriate moment, but since you did it already, thank you so much. Please add 30 seconds for our last speaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Members of the committee, my name is Heidi Droshak. I'm here to speak in favor of SB 78. I simply want to point out that this bill has a very limited application. It is only for political advertisements that are independent expenditures that advocate for or against political advertisements made 60 days before a general election and 30 days before a special election. So this does have a very limited scope. It also is already the law in many places like Arizona and Rhode Island, as well as federally, and has been litigated and stands up in the courts. The only other thing that I will mention is that there is no evidence or even suspicion that disclosed donors have faced any reprisals or threats against them because of this disclosure. We are simply trying to give transparency to the voters and to the candidates themselves, who sometimes are the recipients of these attacks. Thank you.
Thank you. We have two speakers online. Please have your camera on, and you will have 1 minute. They're speaking in support?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
All right. You have 1 minute apiece.
Jessica Mott, please unmute your mic and give your testimony.
Okay, I'm unmuted. My name is Jessica Lamont from Arlington, Virginia. I'm a member of the Executive Committee of Grassroots Group We of Action. I support this bill. As an active and responsible citizen, it is important for me to be able to assess information and views about candidates and referendum candidates. And this assessment requires knowing the sources and donors who sponsor electoral advertisements, including when the advertisements are funded independently of campaign committees. This just brings the information, level of information up on par to what's already existent in campaigns. It would increase voter access by disclosure of key funders. The greater disclosure should help discourage the influence of dark money in Virginia's elections. It would not undermine freedom of speech.
Thank you so much.
Bill Millshauser, please unmute your mic and give your testimony. Mr. Millhauser, please unmute your mic.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to provide these brief comments. My name is Bill Millhauser. I'm a resident of Fairfax County. I support SB 78. It is absolutely imperative that voters know who is funding independent messages that are not coordinated with campaigns. SB 78 protects legislators and candidates from these anonymous attack ads, which have proliferated since the Supreme Court's ruling in Citizen United. I'll just repeat a quote from Justice Scalia, which was mentioned earlier today, and that is, requiring people to stand up in public for their political acts fosters civic engagement, without which democracy is doomed. I think that's an apt way to finish my brief comments. I urge you to support this bill. Thank you for your opportunity to provide these comments.
Thank you. Do we have any speakers here in opposition of the bill? Please come up to the podium. I'm only seeing two. You each have a minute apiece. Please place 2 minutes on the clock. Or 3 minutes.
Members of the committee, Benjamin Knotts with Americans for Prosperity. There's a longstanding tradition in this country that anonymous speech is protected. You can go to the Federalist Papers, you can go to the Doolittle letters, all the different things that show anonymous speech is protected in a public space. The NAACP versus Alabama case is where this was fortified because the Alabama wanted to expose the NAACP's donors for the purpose of harassing them so that they would stop funding an issue they did not agree with. So it's imperative with that precedent set that we protect donors who don't want to be put up at the top 3 of every ad. It's going to be a race to the bottom to not be on there because you don't want to be at the top 3, and it's going to be a negative impact for every issue advocacy group in the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members, Chris Kaiser with the ACLU of Virginia. We're here in opposition to the bill. I want to say at the outset, we take seriously the efforts to combat corruption or the appearance of corruption in elections, but with this bill, any effort to categorize independent expenditure groups that do not directly coordinate with candidates, the same as those that do, have been invalidated under the First Amendment. Similar measures have been invalidated in California and New York and New Jersey. We don't want to see this meet a similar fate. We are at the table to talk about this important issue because it's real, but this bill isn't the way to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Steve Rossi, Family Foundation of Virginia. We oppose the bill for the reasons stated. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Senator Pavola.
Sure. I would just say I did take the issue part, the referendum part, out of this bill. So when they're talking about issues, they're talking about an advertisement that would have to be targeted to a particular candidate based on an issue. So I just wanted to clarify. In other words, candidate X does not support universal child care, for example. So just so you're clear. And a previous speaker, I think, indicated there have been cases in other states where the courts have upheld this. So I just leave that to the committee.
Thank you, Senator,
thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Senator Pavola. Senator Eben.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to ask Senator Pavola if this year's substitute for SB 78 is similar to what we passed out of this committee last year, with the exception of the referendum campaigns.
Yes, it is, except I even increased the thresholds by which reporting would have to be done for individual up to 1,000, from I think 200, and organizations up to 5,000. So I did increase the threshold for the reporting. Otherwise, you're looking at the same bill.
At the appropriate time, I've got a motion.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Sturtevant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for a clarification question for Senator Frivola, is this the law in other states? Do they have a campaign finance law like this anywhere else, if you're aware?
Well, I believe we had it in 2 states. The bills, I did not read the laws in those 2 states, but they are supposedly very similar. They do have third-party electioneering laws on their books. So I consider this to be very streamlined now that I've taken out the referendum issue. It's as bare bones as you can get and still have a law that would make a difference. It's whether or not you want to take that first step or whether you wish me to continue to work on this. It's the will of the committee.
And just a follow-up question.
Senator Sturtevant.
Thank you. And I think that there was the California, there may be a subsequent California law I'm not aware of, but I Google searched the Bonta case that struck down a California nonprofit donor disclosure requirement law similar to this. And so I guess one concern for me is whether or not there are constitutional issues here. Because as I understand it, the 501c4s don't have to disclose their donors per the IRS. And so would this be sort of a workaround on that to require that disclosure, even if IRS?
Only if they choose to, again, contribute into election communication. Otherwise, I don't care who their donors are. It's how they're trying to influence a specific candidate election.
Thank you. Thank you. See, Senator Durant is in the queue. Senator Durant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for the patron.
You have the floor.
I apologize, Mr. Chair, and Senator Frivola, if this was already addressed. Is there a House companion bill to this
There
one?
is a House companion. It was carried by Delegate Helmer, and I will be completely straightforward. That bill was passed by for the day in the House. Just so you know, I figure we're all colleagues here. We have to be honest with each other. And,
I thought there was an amendment, and it might have been different. So apologies for that.
Mr. Chairman, I did shape an amendment based on the conversations that Delegate Helmer had with the House P&E Committee. So Delegate Helmer had the same monetary thresholds I have, but I took out the referendum issue. His was in his bill had the referendum in there.
Senator DeStaff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And for the young lady that was up here giving the example of the dog, I meant no harm to you. It's just we see these videos of people testifying, and those clips end up in social media things against people, and I want everybody for the record to know that Barbara loves puppies and we love Barbara. So I just want to make sure for the record everybody knows that. Thank you.
In defense of my speaker, I don't think she knows the protocol of the Senate. So in her defense, she meant no harm. Thank you, Senator DeStaff.
So Senator Frivola, the points that the ACLU brings, I have serious concern on it. I think we all want to support transparency and making sure that we understand that we want to know where the money is coming from. We're talking about campaigns. I'd like to see you continue working on this bill to get it right so there's peace in the valley. But I know there, Senator Admin, we have a motion for us.
Yeah, I wanted to move to report. We passed similar legislation last year, and I think this is a good idea, and that transparency is important in our elections.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you.
Does this have to go to finance? I hope no.
No.
So there's a motion to report with a substitute, and please open the vote.
Ayes 7, no 6, one abstention.
That's the closest vote I've had
Thank
this
you.
session, so thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have, let's see, Senator Suderline isn't here. And then we'll have Senator Perry. You want to do your? You have the floor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm here on Senate Bill 692. I do have a line amendment that I'm happy to read.
Is there a motion to accept the amendment?
So, second.
So motion to second. All in favor?
Maybe record it.
The amendment is reported.
The amendment is just after line 35. It's an enactment clause that the provisions of this act should become effective on July 1, 2025. This is a bill, by way of background, 2 decades ago, the General Assembly enacted the first in a series of laws that led to universal e-filing of campaign finance reports. These policies sped public disclosure and made Virginia a national leader in transparency. But in this conversation, one small corner of campaign finance was overlooked, which means that in 2024, disclosures of independent expenditures are filed on paper and devices known as fax machines. In some places today, it's easier to access broadband than a fax machine. While independent expenditures used to be small potatoes, any of you who ran in a tightly contested race last fall know that they are now a big deal. According to VPAP, independent expenditures in the 2023 Senate and House elections totaled $5.9 million, a fourfold increase over 2019. In 8 Senate districts, the average spending was $465,000. Quicker posting on the internet with paper can take several days for VPAP to receive and key the documents. Are some of the benefits of mandatory e-filing. For the first time, there will be electronic disclosure of independent expenditures in local elections, unlike now. Additionally, the State Department of Elections must build a filer app integrated with Common and create web pages to display info. Currently, I don't have an updated FIS statement as to what this will cost, but we expect that this will just bring in the independent expenditures in line with everyone else who has to do filing. An identical bill was sponsored by Delegate Sickles and won unanimous approval from the House P&E Committee, and I would ask the members to pass this bill as well, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. You have anyone here to speak in support of the bill?
I do.
Okay. We have a total of 2 minutes.
Mary Crutchfield with the League of Women Voters of Virginia. We support SB 692, including the delayed effective date. The League believes that democratic government depends on informed and active participation of its citizens. Timely access to campaign expenditure information is important to such participation, increasing voters' ability to make informed decisions. Requiring electronic filing of all campaign expenditure reports and removing the provision that has different requirements as to where campaign reports must be filed, depending on the office and candidate, and the office that the candidate is seeking, as this bill does, is a significant step toward promoting transparency through timely access with all reports in a central location and no need to wait for some to be digitized. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is David Poole. I'm here speaking on behalf of myself and No Group that I formerly used to work for. And this is unlike the previous bill. There's no policy issues. It's a very simple matter that says, listen, it's the 21st century. It's 2024. All campaign finance information should be filed electronically. This is the last little corner, as Senator Perry said, that we just kind of forgot about. And it's a simple measure, and I hope that it will be the pleasure of the committee to pass this bill, move it forward.
Please make sure your camera is on and you have 30 seconds.
Is that me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I support the bill. It would bring it in our practice in line with norms already established in other states. I urge you to support the bill. Jessica Mott from Arlington, We Have Action.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition of the bill? Members from the committee, seeing just 1 second. There's a motion, but we also have a member in the queue, Senator Sturdivant.
I just had a question for Mr. Poole, if he's...
Please make it quick.
Mr. Poole, I think this legislation looks like common sense to most of us. Are there unintended consequences we may not be thinking about for small independent expenditures that may be trying to stop a landfill going in a rural part of the state where there are potential internet issues that we should be thinking about? Interested in your experience on this.
I think, Senator, to answer your question, I don't think there's any, it creates no bar for anyone. It would be a very simple filing system online where it would be one transaction at a time. It's not nearly as complicated as Comet. I think perhaps the only people that might be opposed to this are the facsimile machine lobby, which I'm not sure if they're still around.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion. Senator, it's a motion. There's a second. Please open the voting rolls.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Thank you. Senator Suderline. Thank you, Senator Perry.
Thank you.
You have SB 107 before us, and this bill looks familiar.
Yes, sir. This committee reported favorably on it last time. I hope it will again. Senate Bill 107 seeks to extend the current prohibition that we have on fundraising when the General Assembly meets during the regular session to also prohibiting fundraising during days that we meet in special session. If I had my way, we wouldn't be allowed to fundraise at all during any special session. And I think that would also help reduce the amount of time we're in special session and not meeting. But unfortunately, that is not acceptable to a lot of our colleagues. But I hope what is acceptable is that we will not fundraise during days that we're actually meeting. I don't think that it's appropriate for us to fundraise then. The prohibition that passed back in the 90s that made it so that we weren't able to fundraise during the regular session, that was back before we went into lots of special sessions. In the last several years, we started going to special session quite frequently, and there were fundraisers during those days. I thought that was inappropriate. Sometimes people would fundraise while we were actually in the chamber. I don't think that's appropriate, and I'd hope that we'd prohibit the practice.
Thank you. Do you have anyone here speaking in support of the bill? Okay, you ladies have 1 minute, 30 seconds each.
Nancy Morgan from Big Money Out. We think this is a common sense bill, which Senator Suderland has been bringing up for years and listening to the committee and trying to incorporate their concerns. I mean, we recognize it's a challenge because they always seem to be in special session all the time. But we do support the bill because it brings more transparency and accountability to voters and enhances confidence in the integrity of our institutions and our legislators. And no mention of puppies in this. No.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, Mary Crutchfield with the League of Women Voters of Virginia. We support SB 107. Current law wisely prohibits General Assembly members from soliciting or accepting campaign contributions during regular sessions. Extending those limits to special sessions closes a gaping hole in the law. Special sessions are no longer infrequent, and a sitting legislator is at no less risk of undue influence from vested interests than as a candidate. Even more so, as a special session is dealing with specific issues in which donors have a stake. This bill will help prevent even the appearance of such influence. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We have one person online. Please make sure your camera is on and you have 30 seconds, ma'am.
My name is Jeff. I keep trying to put my camera on, it doesn't stay on. Weird. Okay. My name is Jessica Mott. We have Action, Arlington, Virginia. I support this bill. It would help rebuild trust in our legislators by helping to avoid the appearance of conflicts of interest. And I think even if there aren't conflicts of interest, the appearance of it undermines the trust that is deteriorating.
Thank you. Senator Eben.
Yeah, I had a question or two, Mr. Chair, for Senator Suderline.
You have the floor, sir.
So this would preclude fundraising during a pro forma special session if we're in an extended special session and there's a meeting of two members in the Richmond area just to gavel in and gavel out. That would preclude a fundraiser on that particular day. Is that right?
Yeah, any day that the General Assembly is scheduled to meet. So generally pro forma, I don't think that would be an issue, but I'm happy to address that.
Well,
I think generally people don't want to, they don't like my bill in general. So I'm very agreeable to amendments.
Okay, and Mr. Chairman, one other point.
You may continue, sir.
I would ask Senator Suderline, the bill on line like 21 or on line 17, it says that you can't adjourn during the regular session, you can't fundraise during the regular session through adjournment sine die. But according to this, if a special session was concluded at, say, noon, you'd be precluded from having a scheduled fundraiser that evening. Is that right?
Mr. Chairman, I would tell the senator that I believe that the way it's written says any day that the General Assembly is scheduled to meet. So the very fact that we were scheduled to meet that day would mean you would not be able to do it. And I'm not sure we're actually supposed to fundraise on the day we adjourn sine die. I've always been my understanding that continued through midnight, but I don't know.
Well, according, Mr. Chair?
Senator,
according to the bill before us on the prohibition on fundraising during the special session, it says on and after the first day of a regular session through adjournment sine die, not through midnight. Just as a point, those are two issues that I've got with this bill.
Senator, are you done?
I'm done.
Senator Roan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Questions for the patron?
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would ask the patron here, if we were to address the concerns that Senator Eben just mentioned, where we could say, for example, on lines 17 and 18, where it says, and on any day the General Assembly is scheduled to meet during a special session, excluding pro forma meetings or sessions, whatever the correct words would be, would that be amenable to the senator on that line? And then later, where it says on 22 and 23, and on any day this General Assembly is scheduled to meet during a special session until the conclusion of that session. Would those be amenable or considered friendly amendments to the senator?
Mr. Chairman, I'd tell the senator that the first one sounds good to me. The second one is one that I might need to see in writing, and I'm not going to tell this committee how to amend a bill or not. But I think my only concern is, as I hear it, is does it make it clear that you can't, if we're in Tuesday, Wednesday, when we conclude Tuesday, that you can't fundraise that evening?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Rowe.
All right, so, Mr. Chair, so then just to make sure I got this correct, so the pro forma one, that's cool.
Yes.
But continuing the prohibition on fundraising that day, even if it might cost you some votes on the committee here, not mine, but others, that one is not okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd tell the senator I'm welcome the amendment. I was just want to make sure that I'm someone that always needs to read the amendments. That's why I'm one of the people that always says, hey, I can't see it on my online yet. And so as I hear it, I'm not certain.
All right, so Mr. Chair, I'm going to make a motion here to adopt both those amendments. I trust council will have the ability to workshop something here. So it will be to add an exception for pro forma in line 18, and then to have something about on line 22 scheduled to meet during a special session, but basically expires at the conclusion of that day session.
Well, Council, you have that? Okay, there's amendment put forth. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
There's a motion, there's a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so, the amendment is accepted. Senator Sudaline, how many years have you brought this bill forward?
I believe this is the second or third time.
Second or third time. My understanding of this bill is not necessarily, because I think, no one wants to be fundraising while we're on the clock during session, but it came down to practicality of bills. Actually, if you're fundraising online, and there would be issues with being able to shut down all your online fundraising and then be able to get it back up in a manner that would preclude or during the current, special session. And that was the issue that was brought up last year. So my question is, how does the bill fix that if it's the same as that version from last year?
Mr. Chairman, I would tell the committee and yourself that I don't believe that clicking, a lot of Republicans, we use Anodot. It's very easy. As I see some of our other folks that like other products, or WinRed. On both of those, it's very easy. My Democratic friends have told me it's also pretty easy on ActBlue to do the same thing. I've been able to turn mine on and off. I try to live by this practice myself because it's what I think we should do. So I seek to turn off my fundraising every special session because I'm always anticipating some friend giving me $1 otherwise to try to blow me up on that. And I've been able to do it, and I'm confident that every one of us that we're able to find a way to win a Senate or House race is also able to do that.
Thank you,
and
Senator.
The reason I brought the bill was not just as a practicality, it was because this fundraising was occurring and I don't think it should be.
Thank you, Senator Sturtevant, and then Senator Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we were talking about friendly amendments, as I understand it, the primary issue this bill has is when it gets down to the lower chamber, it sounds like in the past. And so I wonder if maybe a mediated solution here to get a different look at it down there is, we do a lot of Christmas tree bills here, is that maybe we could put in here that it would, a senator could opt in to be subject to this, so that, the senator from Roanoke would not be able to do fundraising during these special sessions. And anybody who wanted to vote for it could make that floor amendment to add themselves on the floor on second reading. It's just a thought, and that may be received better by the lower chamber.
Mr. Chair.
Is that an amendment?
Mr. Chairman.
Just Senator Van Valkenburg is in the queue, then you, Senator Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess if we're going to try to solve the puzzle of this bill, I am going to offer another amendment, because it just says anytime the General Assembly is scheduled to meet. It doesn't say anytime the entire General Assembly is scheduled to meet. And while I share the senator's general distaste of fundraising, I also live in the real world where I have to constantly be doing it, because the dark money groups that just came up here to speak against the previous bill spend millions of dollars against me. And so as much as I would love to not spend some of these days fundraising, the reality is I have to. And so if we're actually going to try to save this bill, I would offer an amendment on line 17 and 22 that would put the word entire between the words the and general.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Senator, it's your bill.
I would just ask, if it's the entire General Assembly, does that mean it requires 140, or should it just say both chambers of the General Assembly?
Well, this bill would affect the entire General Assembly, would it not?
Right, but
So
the
that
entire
we're saying
General
someone was
Assembly is
absent.
140 people, whereas...
How about quorum?
Sure.
For the end.
Quorum's good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So there's an amendment put forth. Does council understand that amendment?
Mr. Chair, so just so I understand, on lines 17 and 18, after on any day, it would be on any day a quorum of the entire General Assembly?
Yeah.
Okay.
But pro forma, not everyone.
But that's already, that pro forma is already baked into the amendment, right?
I know. I don't like legislating at the
Mr.
dais.
Chair, yeah, that, and then there's the separate amendment made by Senator Rome regarding pro forma sessions, so it wouldn't apply to pro forma sessions. We haven't formulated language for that, so that'll have to be on the fly and as we go. And then there would be another amendment, so it'd be at least 3 amendments.
Maybe a substitute.
Maybe a substitute at this point, yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have an amendment before us. Is there a motion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the amendment is moved. Senator Rome, I'm not even sure what this bill looks like right now. But Senator Rome?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, just a point of order. Have we taken testimony? I'm trying to keep track.
Or
like beyond the speaker, have we heard from witnesses yet?
We had testimony.
Okay.
But not
Then,
against.
okay, so then, Mr. Chair, I have a motion then, which is to report as heavily amended. And also, Mr. Chair, I'd like to speak to that motion.
May as well.
I'm sorry. repeat.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to speak to that motion as well.
You can speak to it now.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, first I would tell my colleagues on the other side here that I don't need to fundraise during session ever to remain being here. So we're good. I'm happy to take you on that. And then the second part on this is that when you have a bill like this, let's look at the integrity of the issue that we're working with here. The integrity of the issue that we're working with here is what happens when the people who represent you are in Richmond? What happens when the people who represent you aren't back home, where you can more easily keep your eye on them, right? When they're doing the people's business. When they're doing the people's business, that's where money needs to stop at the door. This is our time as legislators where we don't have to worry about fundraising. We don't have to worry about all the campaign stuff. We're here to do our jobs in that moment. And our jobs at that point is not about running for re-election or running for whatever else it is. Our job at that point is to write bills, pass bills, or in any other case, perform the functions and the duties of what it means to be a legislator in this Commonwealth. That's what I think the heart and soul of what we're trying to get at is. And that's why I've made the motion, Mr. Chairman, to report as
There
amended.
was a motion to report. Is there a second?
Just because I don't like to have motions hanging out there.
Okay, we have a motion second. Is there an alternate motion? Okay, for point of clarity on this committee, I'm asking my committee members, please refuse from speaking to each other. Have all conversation come through the chair. That way, no one gets misaligned, and we can keep decorum. So we have a motion before us to report with all the amendments and the substitute. Please open the vote. I ain't voting for this bill.
Ayes 10, noes 4.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the committee for their time.
Senator Rome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the members of the committee here, SB 326. This would prohibit public utilities from contributing to a campaign committee, or a political committee in Virginia. This legislation is not to criticize how any of us raised the money we needed for our campaigns to get here today. It's about having a fresh start for reforming our campaign finance laws. Public utilities are, by definition, regulated monopolies and are performing a duty in lieu of direct government service. This would not prohibit individuals who work in these 73 companies, nor unions affiliated with them, from contributing to Virginia political campaigns. Only the regulated monopolies providing a service to the Commonwealth with no private sector competition. In effect, the General Assembly and the SEC are their competition, and public utility dollars should be prohibited in the same way that we don't accept campaign contributions from government agencies, the office of the governor, the office of the lieutenant governor, the office of the attorney general, or from any of our individual offices as state legislators. Finally, Mr. Chair, I introduced the preceding version of this in 2018 in my first year in office. This has been, as we just heard from the past speaker here, we've heard a lot of efforts to reform our campaign finance system over the years, and I'm hoping this is the year that we finally get some of these things across the finish line.
Thank you, Senator Rome. You have anyone speak in support of the bill?
Can I ask a question first, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Senator Deeds.
Senator Rome, you said it involves 73 entities, public utilities. Are there only regulated monopolies that are included in this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this
73, could you maybe describe?
Yeah, so sure, Mr. Chair, I would tell the senator that you'll certainly hear from some of them soon on the opposing side, but basically any public utility monopoly, whether it's gas, whether it is electric, just kind of going down the line here, railroads would be another, I suppose, but there's, just we wanted to make sure that if you're performing a service in lieu of the government doing it as a regulated monopoly, that the company is not donating directly to candidates.
So all the members here speak in support, please stand up so I can get a sense of how many you are. Please put 3 minutes on the clock. And that 3 minutes is for the entire group. So if one person uses up all the time, that's it.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Mary Crutchfield with League of Women Voters, Virginia. We support SB 326. The League believes that no one contributor should have undue influence on the outcome of an election that has long supported banning regulated utilities from contributing to campaigns. Data from the Virginia Public Access Project, VPAP, confirms that the last election was the most expensive on record for Virginia, and that the $775,000 was contributed by Dominion Energy, Virginia's public utility, and it topped the list of large donors. And that figure does not include any amount given through its PAC, so it could well be higher. A 2021 poll conducted by the Wasson Center at Christopher Newport University showed that 56% of respondents favor banning corporate contributions altogether, which further supports restricting utilities' abilities to influence elections. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nancy Morgan from Big Money Out. Our group supports this bill. Clearly, as the patron mentions, contributions from state-regulated monopolies is perceived by the public as a conflict of interest. And there are at least 5 states that specifically prohibit public utility companies from making contributions. These include Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. So there is precedent in terms of putting in place these types of bills. Obviously, our group supports a total level of playing field through a general limits bill, but this bill is important in that it clearly addresses an existing conflict of interest between a corporation and the body that provides oversight and regulation. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Lillian Anderson, and I'm representing the Virginia Conservation Network. We're the partnership of over 160 different environmental organizations across the Commonwealth, and we support this bill. Virginia's weak campaign finance laws, combined with the monopolies granted to our electric utilities, reward these corporations with undeniable influence in our energy policy. We strongly support this bill banning contributions from public utility monopolies so that lawmakers are tasked with regulating them, and we hope that you will support this bill as well. Thank you.
One person online. You have 30 seconds, ma'am.
My name is Jessica Mobb. We have Action, Arlington, Virginia. I support this bill for the reasons that have been mentioned by others, in that it addresses the conflict of interest, would help rebuild trust, and also bring us in line with precedents set in other states, including adjoining ones.
Thank you. Do we have anyone here to speak in opposition of the bill? Please put 4 minutes on the clock.
Mr. Chairman, Chris Nolan,
Oh, you can put 5 on there. 5 minutes on the clock. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Chris Nolan, McGuire Woods on behalf of Dominion Energy. I know that several of the members of this committee are new, and this is the 8th year that my client has stood up in opposition to this bill. And quite simply, it's because it decides to take the speech of one and suppress it so that others, their speech is elevated as a consequence in the political realm. Dominion has been very consistent with regard to the fact that our campaign finance laws should apply equally across the board. And I appreciate where the senator is coming from relative to this legislation. However, I do have a different view of it. This General Assembly, its power is plenary, it is absolute, it is unqualified. In every General Assembly session, this body in total makes decisions that affect hundreds of millions of dollars. People appear before you that participate in the political process, be it certificate of public need, franchise laws, gaming, cannabis, down the list. They're not in this bill. If you're going to have campaign finance reform, it should apply equally across the board. And that's not what this bill does. It's not what this bill has ever done. And then finally, so that I know that others want to speak, I would just, since this is new to several of you, the bill itself, it doesn't just apply to the public utility, it applies to the holding company. So if you have revenue from an industry that is not regulated by the SEC, your holding company cannot participate in this. It also prohibits you from contributing to a political action committee or a referendum committee. It also, as written, prohibits you from establishing a PAC for your employees. And for those reasons, Mr. Chairman, we oppose the bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Patrina Jones-Robleski, and I work for Columbia Gas of Virginia. We have an employee PAC that consists of about 40 members. They range from specialists in corrosion, damage prevention, construction, regulatory, legal, and their genuine feedback to me when I tell them about this bill is, why are we being singled out, and why at this critical time for our industry? So for those reasons, we hope you'll oppose the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, excuse me, John Morris, Appalachian Power, and it has been mentioned by the previous speakers, APCO would oppose singling out public utilities for this kind of disparate treatment, and then as a result allowing others with different or opposing views to participate in the political process. I will note that our contributions aren't recoverable in rates, and of course, we disclose all of our contributions as required under Virginia and federal law, so we ask that the committee reject the bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Morgan Whalen with Virginia Natural Gas. Second the comments already made. As mentioned, this would disallow our parent company, who's based in Georgia, who provides a corporate contribution. I think it's important to note that Virginia Natural Gas does not include, and also the State Corporation Commission does not allow recovery of these expenses from the customers. So this is a corporate expense. I think also some incorrect information may have been shared. Again, my parent company is based in Alabama and Georgia, and there's not rules that prohibit them from donating to state candidates in those states. Second, our political committee is also a mix. It's about 40% from a local golf tournament that includes local businesses, a lot of family-run businesses from the Hampton Roads region who've been in service, and so so this would prevent us from being able to work with them and advocate for industry. So for those reasons, we ask that you oppose the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee member Scott McGarry of Washington Gas, and as with great respect to the patron, and as I expressed to her, our particular concern is with respect to it reaching the Political Action Committee. We have an employee PAC comprised of employees voluntarily donating their own funds. I've always thought the best answer is full disclosure, and so I commend that to you and appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. We have quite a few members in the queue. We'll start with Senator Eben.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment that I discussed with the patron, and I'd like to introduce it and speak to it briefly.
You have the floor, sir.
The amendment would allow an employee PAC to contribute regardless of the status of the company, because these PACs are made up of employees, and I don't think we should suppress their free speech right, although I understand what the patron's trying to get at with the larger bill. The clerk, do you want the clerk to read the amendment? Or?
Yes, please.
Mr. Chair, the amendment reads, after line 17 of the introduced bill, insert, this section shall not be construed to prohibit the solicitation or acceptance of contributions from a political action committee established by employees of a public utility. Such political action committee may be administered by the public utility so long as no general treasury funds of the public utility are used for the purposes of making contributions to any candidate campaign committee or political committee.
We have an amendment before us. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the motion and amendment is accepted. Senator Eben, are you know?
Yeah, I mean, now the bill's before us as amended.
Thank you.
So.
Now, Senator Salim.
I just wanted, Mr. Chairman, if I could speak to the bill. I know, thank you, Senator Rome, for bringing this up, and thank you to Senator Eben for making the amendment, a friendly amendment for that matter. I do want to just speak to the bill. I know it says public utilities, and some of the folks that came up here in support of it specifically singled out a specific public utility company. But at the same time, you know, when we look at our contributions, there's a two-way street on this. Candidates have the right to not accept contributions if they don't want to take it from public utility companies, along with the fact that with VPAP and other sources, everything is made publicly available. And when we're looking at public utilities, it's going to be impacting a lot. You know, there isn't just one or two public utility companies in the Commonwealth. There's a lot more than that. So, you know, I go back and forth on this specific one, but I do appreciate the patron for bringing this up, along with Senator Eben for making that friendly amendment.
Thank you, Senator Salim. We have Senator Deeds.
I just had a question for staff. This is different than the bill we've seen the last few years, isn't it? I mean, that bill, as I recall, only applied to Dominion and Appalachian Power. This applies to a whole range of I suppose, regulated monopolies. Maybe you could give us a rundown of the types of businesses it applies to.
Mr. Chair, Senator Deeds, this bill is identical to a bill we heard last year, SB 804, that was Senator Peterson's bill. There was another bill, I believe, that we heard last year that only applied to, I think it was Phase 2 utilities, and that's specific to, I believe, Dominion. This is broadly utilities as defined in the section mentioned in the bill, which would include water, sewer, telecom, and power companies, amongst perhaps others.
Senator Deeds. Senator Carol Foy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, speaking to the bill.
You have the floor.
First, I'd like to thank the patron for bringing this bill forward. First, I would like to respond to the utilities argument that they're being singled out. Let's be clear. I, along with so many of my counterparts, do believe that we need to end Citizens United, that we need robust and comprehensive campaign finance reform across the board. And I think that this bill is a good first step. But we actually have to be very clear, and I'm willing to go on the record and say that the reality is that you can follow the money. And the reality is that Dominion's outsized role in Virginia politics has resulted in some of the highest electric bills in the country and more than $1.9 billion in customer overcharges since 2009. So we are responsible for regulating these utilities, and they have contributed considerably to ensure that they have some of the most favorable laws and rules in Virginia. And I have to say that as an elected official, I was taken aback by the fact that it was really one entity that I knew, and everyone here knew, they got to write their own bills, and they paid very well for that. And that needs to end, and I appreciate this patron for bringing this bill.
Thank you, Senator Kilfoy. Senator DeStaff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had two questions of the patron.
You have the floor, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rome, what's the enforcement mechanism on here? And then what is the cost associated with that enforcement mechanism?
Sure. So, Mr. Chairman.
You have the floor, Senator.
Sure. So, Mr. Chairman, I would defer to counsel for the two answers on this because I believe this is in the same posture as anything else that would fall under this section of code.
And before counsel speaks, if this bill is so reported, it does have to go to finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh,
counsel.
They requested it today.
They requested it today.
Just today?
They requested it.
Oh.
So counsel.
Mr. Chair, Senator DeStaff, I believe if there was a violation found, it could be reported either to the Commonwealth's attorney or to the Attorney General under provisions in Title 24.2, and that would be handled by one of those entities as a violation of that title.
Mr. Chair, thank you.
Senator DeStaff.
Mr. Chair, one follow-up is, so I understand we're hitting certain public utility companies. Wouldn't it be better, or would the patron find it this a friendly amendment if we applied this to all entities regulated by the State Corporation Commission?
So, Mr. Chairman, I would tell the patron in this case that just getting the bill to where it is today is a product of years, of efforts on this. While I have personally no objection whatsoever to what the senator has just put forward, I think it would put the bill in a more precarious position. That said, if you'd like to work with me in the off session about having a more broad version of this for the 2025 year, I would be happy to entertain the senator in doing so.
Mr. Chair, speaking to the bill when appropriate.
Or all right, we'll come back to you. Senator Sturdivant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two comments. One, some folks like to take shots at Dominion, especially in forums like this, as one of the largest private employers in my district that employs a lot of people and helps put a lot of kids through college and helps people put food on the table. I don't think it's fair to take shots like that in a forum like this. Firstly, secondly, there are a lot of entities that donate money to folks who are running for office and in office who have important matters before the General Assembly. There have been many instances where labor unions have given to folks. Certain organizations like Planned Parenthood have given lots of money to certain candidates, all of whom advocate for things that are important to them down here and who benefit from things that are written into law and in the budget. And so singling out one entity or one industry or one regulated industry while leaving out all the others, I don't think is good policy. And but I appreciate the patron's attempts at reform. Thank you.
Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Sturdivant. You have the last words, man.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would tell the senator in that case that what's different from the organizations and unions that the senator mentioned is that they are not regulated monopolies. We are dealing with regulated monopolies. That's what's different here is that these are corporations that are providing a public service in lieu of the government doing it itself. That's why we have a heightened scrutiny with a bill like this to those specific donors. And Mr. Chair, at the bottom line on this is, especially as amended, the individuals who work at those corporations, the unions who do, anyone else who does, absolutely has the ability to be able to contribute to campaigns. At the same time, as we saw today, is that when it comes to influence in the General Assembly, every one of these utilities absolutely has their either attorneys or lobbyists or both here in the General Assembly, as they have the right to do. And no one denies that right. What we're trying to get at here is the financial aspect of that. No one here is trying to say you can't have a conversation with a legislator. What we are saying is that if you're a public utility who's a regulated monopoly, you should not be able to donate. And in this case, the amended version of this directly from company source, the company's fund to the legislator.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Rome. We have the bill before us. Now is there a motion? Just 1 second. My apologies. Senator D. Staff asked earlier to speak to the bill. Sir, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, speaking to the bill.
You have the floor.
So I think we try the best here to find balance and a level playing field. And when we give preferential treatment to one group of companies, we're diminishing the rights of other groups of companies. And that's one of the reasons I brought up about if we're going to treat one entity under the SCC, one group or class one way, and then another group of class a different way, I think we're diminishing the rights of those other companies while giving preferential treatment to the others. So what we're doing here, I think it's inequality at its best, but it's picking out one group or class. If you look at VPAP, and I know the patron of the bill did bring that up earlier, and you look at the top 3 groups donating to different political campaigns, we have environmental groups, we have regulatory groups, we have public utility companies. So when we just pull out one of those and start, pinging on them, I think it's just bad form and bad policy. That was why I suggested we had all entities regulated by the SEC, so we have a level playing field and we're not diminishing the rights of any group of companies or any class of companies, or giving preferential treatment to one group over another. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would like to provide a motion when appropriate, and I'm happy to work with the patron over the time over the session to modify this further. But I'd like to make a motion that we carry this over for the year.
We have one more speaker in the queue, and when the time is ready, we will entertain all motions. Senator Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I just want to, I guess, maybe hit on the point that Senator Rome talked about being a publicly regulated monopoly. In the early 1900s, across America, we made a bunch of policy decisions that rather than have the free market do this, rather than have the government do it, that we were going to give these companies the rights to do that, and we were going to guarantee them a certain amount of profit to have them do it for us. And I think that's the important distinction here, because built into the law is the ability for them to be guaranteed money, which means that when you tinker with the law, you're tinkering with their profit margins in a way that, while sure is true of a lot of interests that come here year in and year out, and I think the broader conversation about corporate donations in general is a good one to have, but that is, I think, a distinction that matters here, and why I'm going to vote the way I'm going to vote. But I just wanted to make sure that we're clear on that distinction, because I think it's an important one.
Now, the bill is before us, and we're entertaining motions. We have a motion from Senator Carol Foy to report. Is there a second? And this bill does have to go to finance. So can you amend your motion?
Amend my motion with amendment to re-refer to finance.
Second. Is there a substitute motion? Okay, hearing none. The bill is before us to report and refer to finance with amendments. Please open vote.
Ayes 8, no 6.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, Senator. All right. Lastly, we have my bills.
I'm giving you my proxy. I got to get in 5 minutes.
I got my bill in front of me right now. But
I got to go.
so are both of y'all leaving?
Both of us.
We're giving our proxies.
All right. So we'll go down the line. I need someone to chair while I do my bills. Skylar, come on down here. You're up. You can leave it to me, but you're affirmative for my bill.
I'm for. I'm
all right.
At your discretion.
So Senator Van Valkenburg will chair the committee while I present my 2 bills, and I'll do it from the dais. So, Mr. Chairman, we have SB 224 in front of us, and I also have SB 300. If I could roll 300 into SB 224.
Can I get a motion to roll Senate Bill 300 into Senate Bill 224?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor of rolling Senate Bill 300 into Senate Bill 224, say aye. It's a recorded vote.
Is it 224 into 3?
Can I get that motion changed so that Senate Bill 224 can be rolled into 300? All right, so there's been a motion and a second to incorporate SB 224 into 300, and that is a recorded vote, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Can you vote for me?
I don't know who's. How do I?
Are you right there? Oh.
Yeah, we are.
That's 14-0.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Take it away, Senator Rouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last year, we learned that over 3,300 voters were unlawfully purged from the voting rolls right before the election because they had been erroneously flagged for being convicted of a new felony. The administration acknowledged that these voters were removed in error, and the office of the State Inspector General was asked by Governor Youngkin to review how eligible voters were improperly removed from their voter rolls after probation violation. The Office of Inspector General released its report in December, and the report acknowledges the improper removals and appears to lay the blame on the Virginia State Police, CCH, which coded probation violation as felonies, and VERS, which removed voters on this basis. And these voters who were wrongfully removed from the voter rolls received no due process, and many were unaware until they tried to vote, and the public only learned the extent of the problem after advocates and journalists started asking questions. And so, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this bill just pretty much allows due process, and so that any member of our Commonwealth could not be purged from the roll without first receiving notification and having a chance to respond. And I have experts here willing to speak to the bill.
All right, let's take testimony first before we go any further. So if you're here to support the bill, come on up and we can go ahead and put 3 minutes on, since that's been what we've been doing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Tram Nguyen with New Virginia Majority. Thank you, Chair Rouse, for carrying this legislation. This is a list maintenance bill. So it does a couple of things. As Senator Rouse mentioned, it provides due process to folks who have been convicted of a felony and may show up on the prohibited voter list. It provides 14 days for them to respond, that either they have not been convicted of a felony or that they've had their rights restored. It matches what the process is for non-citizens who've been flagged, which is legislation that Senator Mark Obenshain actually carried here about 10 years ago. So it just aligns it and levels the playing field for those folks. The other thing it does, just quickly, is last week we had a robust conversation about Senator Van Valkenburg's bill around the quality of the data source. This legislation deals with the data field itself, the actual data itself. And so you've got quality data source, and now we're talking about the combination of data fields, right? And so the substitute here talks about having a minimum threshold of confidence. So any combination of data fields would have a minimum threshold of 80%, an 80-point confidence level. So a full Social Security number, for example, in this legislation is worth 50 points. That's a very high confidence level. Combine that with first name, last name, and you get to about 80 points there. So it sort of gives you a bunch of different options to make sure that the data fields actually match, and people can be sure that the person on this list matches the person that's about to be removed. And it just requires registrars to also provide cancellation notices. And so this is just a good best practice list maintenance procedure to make sure that our voter rolls are kept accurate and folks are not improperly removed. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, Mary Crutchfield with League of Women Voters, Virginia. We strongly support both SB 224 and SB 300, which now are rolled in together. Addressing the SB 300 part, We support that because it's imperative that Virginia diligently maintain accurate voter lists. After withdrawing from ERIC, the consortium of states that securely and accurately matches data, Virginia has embarked on a series of memoranda of understanding, or MOUs, with a number of other states. ERIC did not share member states' voters' personal identifying information, while MOUs do. ERIC employed widely accepted national and international security protocols, while the MOUs do not address, and Virginia cannot determine the strength of other states' security protocols. This bill would require careful data matching, record keeping, and notice to ensure that eligible registered voters are not improperly removed from the list of registered voters in Virginia.
Thank you. And we'll do 2 more minutes for you three. But first, we need to adopt the substitute.
Mr. Chairman, the speaker came up and she was speaking to substitute, and I move we adopt. I move we adopt the
Been a
substitute.
motion and a second to adopt the substitute. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So now the substitute is properly before us, and we'll do 2 more minutes for the last 3 of you. And go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm the Reverend Cozy Bailey. I'm president of the Virginia NAACP, and we are happy to support this bill, and we thank Senator Rouse for bringing this bill forward. And as already been stated, we all know that last year there was an egregious error that was made by the Department of Elections under the Youngkin administration, which caused undue stress to legitimate voters. Many Virginians were falsely removed from the voter rolls just weeks before the election, and we will never know the extent of voter disenfranchisement that occurred because of this error. And it should be noted that voter disenfranchisement, either accidental or intentional, is an assault on the democratic process. The incident referenced is particularly alarming considering the challenges that this administration has imposed to those seeking restoration of voting rights. We strongly support this bill to ensure that this terrible mistake never happens again. And we thank the friends that we have in the New Virginia majority for leading the effort on this piece of legislation. And we urge the committee to please pass this bill. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, members, Chris Kaiser, Policy Director with the ACLU of Virginia. I echo the other witnesses' support for this bill, and I'll yield the rest of the time to the remaining witness. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. I want to thank Senator Rouse for bringing up this bill. I'm from Arlington, sorry, I'm speaking as an individual. I'm a community volunteer, and I work with 2 people who are on that list of 3,000. If you have never spoken with a person who has lost their voting rights and has fought to get them back, you probably don't understand how much it can impact their lives and their, personally. So hopefully this will correct, at the very least, we'll have due process for these people. Thank you.
All those who oppose the bill, if you would like to come up and speak at this time, we'll set it for 3 minutes to start as well.
Clarabelle Wheeler, member of the Albemarle County Electoral Board. I'm speaking for myself. The section of the bill that was 224 that requires a time-certain notification for felons who may be taken off the voter rolls, I think is a good thing. It gives the registrars a certain time for them to perform and act. I would say that anytime we procrastinate, we presume to impede completion of a duty, which brings us to the section of the bill 300, which removes at least 5 or 6 different time certains required by either the Department of Elections or the registrars to perform certain duties. For instance, requiring monthly reports for decedents, for felony convictions, for courts that have ordered incapacitation. All of these are important factors that need to be taken care of by the registrars in a timely set number of days fashion. The death records which you defeat and you remove in this bill by the Social Security Administration need to be part of our list maintenance. The Virginia Bureau of Vital Statistics presents information to the Department of Elections, but that does not include people who have been registered in Virginia and moved across state lines and died out of Virginia. The Social Security Administration death decedent records do perform that duty by bringing that information to the Department of Elections, which should transfer it on a monthly basis to the registrars, who must maintain, as I'm sure you've all read on this committee, the complete National Voter Registration Act, which says, and I quote, "The localities and the states shall maintain accurate and current voter registration list." Current may be up for interpretation, but I don't think it's a year behind. I think the 30 days in all of the deleted portions on this bill need to be returned. This bill will impede accurate and current voter registration. I invite you to look at a different means of just taking care of notifying the felons. Thank you.
Senator Sturdivant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just speaking briefly to the bill. The substitute that we just adopted is pretty different than the original that I reviewed over the weekend. And it's 14 pages. And so, with respect to the chairman and the point guard of our basketball team, I'm not going to be able to vote in favor of this now, but plan to do my due diligence if and when this gets to the floor. I would note one of the new significant material changes to this substitute is the point score system for creating a confidence score when considering removal of someone from the registrar's rolls. And it requires a confidence score of at least 80 points. And one of the things is a match of a full Social Security number equals 40 points. The match of a DMV customer identifier number is 50 points. Date of birth is 25 points. Question I had, I thought I heard one of the speakers who spoke in support about an open chain bill. Does this point score system come from that, or did I mishear that? This is something different.
Tram, do you want to address that?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So what I've referenced on the open chain bill was related to the 14-day notice for folks convicted of felony. This point system is actually borrowed from the state of Indiana. They have a very similar point system. I think we're currently, and I don't know if anyone from the Department of Elections is here, they do have, I don't know what point system they use or whatever, but they do have a confidence threshold that they currently use before they send certain information over to the registrars. And so this actually just tries to put something in code to make sure that we have some standard instead of just leaving it up to, administration by administration.
Department of Elections, want to come up and?
Mr. Chair, Rachel Lawless, Confidential Policy Advisor at the Department of Elections. ELECT currently uses a confidence level matching. It is different than what's prescribed in the bill. This technical change will impact Ferris and the new SVRS system that is currently in development. It does redesign our confidence matching system.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Rouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This approach gives us greater flexibility on the combination of data fields that need to match, while also providing a high level of confidence that the two individual records actually does match. And so also in the substitute version also requires the general registrars to send a notice prior to canceling a voter's registration, regardless of the reason of cancellation. And again, this bill just clarifies that when a voter registration is canceled, that a cancellation record must be created and that such records are public in accordance with the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and National Voter Registration Act.
Anybody else on the committee? If not, we work on motions.
Can we get a motion?
There's been a motion and a second to report.
As amended, substitute.
And it has to go to finance.
So let's try that again.
Motion to report a substitute and refer to finance.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to refer Senate Bill 300 as substituted to finance. And it's been seconded, so open the rolls.
Ayes 8, no 6.
All right, that measure passes 8-6. I'll pass it back over.
Thank you, Senator Van Valkenburg. I believe that concludes our docket for today. This meeting is adjourned.